Servco Corporation here, and I built a shopping center down in Guam in 1996. In the first 24 months that we owned the property, a Korean Airlines flew an airliner into the side of the island and blew up and killed everyone aboard. In the next 2 months after we opened, we had 3 hurricanes. Then 9/11 came, then SARS. What separates people who might survive in this business and not? You just have to keep going. The day I arrived here, the company that I had a job with filed for bankruptcy. Fortunately, I was able to get several opportunities because we were in a very strong real estate cycle at the time. So luck is a huge part of everybody's journey in life. I remember my father asking me to go out in the field every summer and work in construction. I remember him telling me philosophically all the time that this was going to be a great experience. And I remember standing out there and it was like 90 degrees thinking, this is not a great experience. And when I decided to start to build my own stuff and I was out in the field, I remembered exactly the experiences that I'd had when I was at that age. And they proved to be invaluable. Father had a little small building that they made prefabricated wooden structures in, and every Saturday he would take me and I would sweep out this little plant, and there were pieces of wood that were left over, and one day I said, why don't we bring these home and make kindling wood to start a fire? Then I said to my father, I wonder if anybody would buy this. And my dad was great. Instead of just telling me I was stupid, he made me sort of figure it out. We took it to a grocery store. The grocer sold it for 50 cents. I had 1 cent in overhead and I got 49 cents in profit, and I spent all downhill since then. There are things that I think inspire each of us differently, and there's an old saying that if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. You got to follow your heart, and you got to do what it is that inspires you. And for those who want to be entrepreneurial, you have to be willing to lose, because sometimes that's the ultimate risk. And with respect to the community, if you don't give back, then you're probably shortchanging the environment that you live in. And so you have to find a balance point amongst your business, your family, and the community.
Greater Good Radio. Connect, learn, heal, and grow. This Greater Good archive video is brought to you by Brain Gain Hawaii, a boutique executive recruiting, career development, and coaching firm. Learn more at braingainhi.com.
Welcome to Greater Good TV, where leaders inspire leaders. I'm your host, Evan Leong, and with me is my co-host, Carrie Leong.
Thank you, Evan. It's a typical story of the mainlander vacationing in Hawaii and falling in love with the warm weather. He arrived as a merchant seaman on a marine research ship in 1971 and returned with his family a year later. Doing what he learned from his parents, he went into real estate and eventually started his own firm, which had co-developed many notable projects, including the Waikele Center, Lelepono Condominium, and is currently involved in the $185 million retail complex with Outrigger Enterprises, Inc., known as the Waikiki Beach Walk. Please welcome to Greater Good TV, CEO of DGM Group and trustee of the estate of James Campbell, Dick Gushman. Welcome to our show, Dick.
Hi guys, it's great to be here.
So could you tell us a little bit more about the DGM Group?
Well, DGM Group actually got named when I was out of town. We were looking for an operating company name to put on a real estate business that I was running at the time. And I came back from a trip and my staff said, hey, we named the company DGM. And I said, oh, how wonderful, Dick Gushman Management. And they said, no, Damn Good Management. So that's how it got named, and it's the operating company that we use to run the properties that we build and own and manage here in the state.
It seems like you have a number of businesses, though. You have Okoa, DGM Group, you have various things. Can you maybe explain a little bit
Well, we try to make it as confusing as possible as we go along, but they're different companies that do different things. But essentially the business that we're in involves real estate in different permutations. We build stuff from ground up, we buy things and manage them and operate them. Sometimes we do development management for others. What we do kind of runs a pretty big spectrum of the business.
And how long have you been in real estate?
I started at a really young age. My mother was trained as an architect, and my dad was a real estate developer and a contractor in the Midwest where I grew up in Ohio. So I went to work for my father in the construction business when I was 12, not voluntarily, might I add. And that kind of grew from there. And so I've been involved in it originally from the construction side when I was young. And I started the development business here in 1972.
Can you tell us a story, maybe when you're working in construction when you're younger, something that was interesting or maybe has molded you to today?
My memories of this business after being in it for all this time is a composite of stuff. But I remember my father asking me to go out in the field every summer and work in construction. And I remember him telling me philosophically all the time that this was going to be a great experience. And I remember standing out there, it was like 90 degrees, thinking, this is not a great experience. And when I decided to start to build my own stuff, and I got into meetings, and I was out in the field, and I was talking to people, and I remembered exactly the experiences that I'd had when I was at that age. And they proved to be invaluable. The collection of those experiences proved to be tremendously helpful to me. So I think Mark Twain said his father got a lot smarter as he got older. I think that proved to be the case for me too.
Was there someone in particular that you spoke to that left you with a message that really made you realize that you want to go into this real estate path, following your father?
No, actually, Carrie, it was somewhat serendipitous, as you said in your preamble. I came here as a merchant seaman, originally on a research ship doing film for National Geographic. And we came back through here in 1971, and in 72 I came back with then my brand new wife, who was pregnant at the time, and she and I came back here. She was going to go to the university, and I was going to continue my marine business. And the day I arrived here, the company that I had a job with filed for bankruptcy. So I went through a career change the following day, and really all I knew was the real estate experiences that I'd had. So I started into this business and as a substitute for what I really came out here to do, and so I'm still doing it. I haven't learned anything in 35 years.
What was that day like for you? I mean, can you recap it? I know maybe it was painful, but what was the day like?
As I said, my wife was pregnant and she wasn't feeling well, and so I went down and had breakfast by myself, and I opened up the advertiser and then went like this, and it said, this company files bankruptcy. It was on the top of the front page. So it sort of took the wind out of my breakfast. Wasn't quite as good as I'd hoped it was going to be. I'd been here for 12 hours. So I went upstairs and she said, what was in the paper? And I said, oh, nothing, honey. So I didn't want to make her upset. She was pregnant. So I realized that I had to find something else to do. And I didn't know anyone here. And so I went around and began to interview with people to see if I could find a job. And fortunately, I was able to get several opportunities because we were in a very strong real estate cycle at the time. So luck is a huge part of everybody's journey in life, and I've certainly had more than my share of that. So I happened to be here at a time when that involuntary career shift proved not to be as devastating as it might otherwise have been.
And at that time, you decided to go and work with McCormick, is that right?
I did. I got a job working for the McCormick Corporation. They were the largest real estate residential sales firm at the time, and they had a development subsidiary, which was run by a guy named Duncan McNaughton. And so I went to work for Duncan, and I think, if I remember correctly, at that time I was 26 and he was 28. Between us, we knew everything, so we were very lucky in that respect. And I worked for Duncan in that company for, I think, 11 months, and I decided to start my own company. Probably an impetuous decision, but anyway, I left and went on my own.
Were you always planning to start your own company, or did you think you would be a company man when you first went in?
It's a good question, Evan. I'm not sure I ever really thought about it, although I would say that I have always been more comfortable making my own decisions, right or wrong, and living with the outcomes than otherwise. So since I only have an 11-month history as an employee, I can't tell you how good I've been, because it was a pretty short stay. And then Duncan, 3 years later, asked me to go to lunch, and we were talking. He said, I noticed that you seem to be doing well, and if you can do it, anybody can do it, so why don't we do it together? And so that's how we started our term together.
So Dick, I was wondering, your wife at that time, what did she say? Because you had this job change. You started a career in real estate. You came, to do something else, and now you're starting your own business. What was her response to that?
Probably something I couldn't repeat on the air. It's suffice to say the fact that I had a career change, and a few months later, after we had a brand new baby, that I've decided to give up the security of working for a company, start my own company. I had $1,800 at the time, so I looked at it as I had a very limited downside. All they had to lose was $1,800, and I had a really old car, so it wasn't, we didn't have a house, so I saw it as a very limited experiment. She didn't see it the same way, but we had a brand new child at home, but she was very supportive, and it worked out. So it's good to have people who believe in you through all of our journeys, and will stay in there with you when the times look less than secure.
So do you think that, it motivated you more because, you had to succeed? Like you said,
absolutely.
You had $1,800.
Yeah.
And then do you think that you gained this motivation from, because you were an athlete, you said, in high school,
yeah.
right? So did that help to
I think that to answer your first question, sheer panic is a wonderful motivator. I mean, I had a certain amount of time to see if I could make it work because $1,800 was not like an infinite experiment. And again, I was fortunate that what I was trying to do worked out. Some of the reserves, perhaps, of the confidence to try something like that came from my collected background. I had very supportive parents, and the training of athletics trains you for a lot of things. And one of the things that I think teaches young people is that ability to persevere, to just keep trying and trying and trying, even when it doesn't seem like it's going well, because it's the only path to improvement. And how well you play whatever you play or do whatever you do athletically is entirely colored by how hard you try at it, in addition to how much talent you bring to it. So I'm sure that was a very strong motivator. Just don't, if you don't give up, the odds seem to get a little bit better for you as you go along.
Can we talk about the start a little bit? Because, we all hear the saying, it takes money to make money.
Right.
You didn't have any money, really. So how did you get started?
I found a family who had a piece of land out in Pearl City. They wanted to do something with it. The long, torturous story of how I got to that relationship, we talked about what they wanted to do. We decided to do it together. And over time, we were able to take their land and some money we borrowed from the bank and build an office building. And I did the development and the leasing, and we were collectively able to make that happen. So we actually had money in the form of the land, and we borrowed the rest.
So how did you live during that time if, all the money was going into the business?
We took management fees out of the development project. The banks always let you have a little leash, and you have to kind of live on that leash, and that pays the overhead of the project, and that was what we lived on. And we built another project and then a third one. So in a matter of a couple of years, we were able to start with the first building, and it began to pick up steam. Again, by great fortune, I was here at a very powerful time in a real estate cycle, which ended a few years after that, which was another terrific learning experience, how to manage when it's not going well.
Let's talk about that a little bit if you
Sure.
are willing. Okay.
Yeah, well, I think that this is sort of a graphic story which may be topical to your audiences today, which we're in a very strong real estate cycle, and particularly in the condominium market. 1973, we built a 30-story, 300-unit condominium in Pearl Ridge called Lele Pono. And when we sold the building, before we started construction, we had 900 buyers show up at this big pre-sale. We had it took like 3 hours to sell the whole thing. We thought we had invented magic. And 2 years later, when we finished it and delivered it, 66 of the buyers had gone away, defaulted, walked away from their deposits, and we were in a serious stage of disappointment. Fortunately, we were almost able to pay off all of our costs, and it took a while to sell the rest of the inventory, but it turned out to be a great learning experience about how to manage the downside, how to try to position the risks, maybe give up some of the top end to marginalize the downside, and also how to manage with fear, because it didn't look good for a while, and that's always an experience that you never know how you'll react to until you're in it.
I was wondering how your work schedule has changed from the very beginning until now, because you folks are doing really big projects. So how has it changed your daily activities?
Oh, that's a great question, Carrie. I mean, in the beginning, it was all, energy and time, because you don't have a lot of experience to pull from. Relationships and the resources of the community broadly defined. So, it was just a matter of pouring hours and hours and hours into it. Fortunately, today, I don't have to do quite as much of that, because hopefully somewhere along the line, I've learned something, and that we have better staff and more capable people helping. So it still takes a bunch of time, but not nearly as crushing as it did in the beginning. And I think that's true for people who try really passionately about anything. Take up enough space in your life to be a consuming experience, because if not, the odds seem to not be in your favor. It just takes a heck of a lot of energy. Yeah.
Since you've been able to, open up your schedule more because you've done bigger projects and been more successful since from the beginning, you've had more time to give back to the community. And we're really appreciative of that, because you were not from Hawaii, yet you've done business in Hawaii, and you're really involved in the Hawaii community. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Again, I think that's a parental legacy. My mother's really active in the community, and my father to some extent as well. It was expected in our family that you had to do service in addition to whatever else you did in the community. So it seemed like a natural thing to do. I must confess that for the early years, as you were pointing out a minute ago, Carrie, that there was a time collision between my family and trying to get this business started. So I didn't really start to get engaged in the community probably until 5 or 6 or 7 years after I came here. And since then, I've been really blessed to have been involved with some different things, the Boys and Girls Club and a whole bunch of others, the university from time to time. And
why did you decide to do it? You can spend all your time on your business and make more money, so why do these community things?
Well, I'm philosophically a firm believer that the communities in which you do business, invest, and manage your financial environment is only as good as the people who put their energy and leadership into it. And there's a complete logic to it to me as a business person, in addition to feeling that there's an obligation to do it as a citizen. And it's a great learning experience for me. I've learned enormous amounts from the people that I've had an opportunity to meet in the nonprofit world. I'm sure way more than they've gotten from me as being a member of their organizations.
I know that you don't go into a nonprofit looking at it as an advantage to be involved, but did you see a change once you got involved? Maybe your business grew, you met higher up people?
Sure, absolutely, Carrie. It's a tremendous opportunity to see parts of the community you would not otherwise see. You get the perspective of different vantage points through the eyes of organizations that are trying to take care of components of the community that really need help. And I think that fashions you in a way that makes your understanding of the community that you do business in maybe more holistic, and certainly you get a sense of what's going on at a really low altitude. You get right down next to where the activities are taking place.
How about a learning experience that you got from helping in the community?
Well, I think there are endless additions to me as a person from doing that. I think one, United Way of America, just to pick one randomly, was a place where I got to meet the labor leadership of the state, who I didn't know. And in my business, we don't have organized labor as employees, but we involve lots of unions in building. So the building trades and all the associated labor organizations we were always engaged with professionally. I got to meet them personally, and it changed my whole view. It enhanced my whole view of organized labor, and some of those folks have become very close friends of mine, and it just was a broadening opportunity for me, just to give you one example.
What kind of advice could you give people in business that maybe have not gotten involved with community activities yet?
A couple of thoughts on that, I think, Evan. First, if you expect communities to take care of themselves, you're a fool. And so if you're making long-term commitments to your business here, it's just a naturally intelligent thing to do, in my view, to give back. That community service has an absolute connection to your business outcomes long-term. And if you don't like what's happening where you're doing business, where you're living, and how your children are being educated and things, you either have two choices. You can either sit down and shut up, or you can stand up and help out. And so I would encourage particularly people who are in business leadership situations to bring their leadership skills to the community needs, because leadership is a commodity in endless supply. There's only a limited amount of it. So I think it's important to share it if you have some of it, and it's real important to take care of the communities in which you live.
What about for the 30 and 40-year-olds who are really trying to build their career, they have a family, or they're just starting a family? Can you help to encourage us to get involved in the community and build our career at the same time so that we can become that leadership in the businesses?
Yeah, I think that volunteering actively will put you in first-person contact with folks you might not otherwise get to see on your path through your life. And so you'll get a chance to interact with perhaps other leadership folks at a different time in their lives and a different point in their careers. And I think they'll find that's tremendously valuable to them, because they see it in a non-threatening environment. You're there with a common expectation, which is to try to improve the community for everybody, not just for a singular profit purpose.
I guess one of the biggest questions is, how do you actually get started? Like, how did you get started? What was the first community organization that you got involved with?
Boy, it's been so long, I'm not even sure I remember which one was the first one. Perhaps it was United Way, way back when I volunteered. But the easiest way to start is to hold up your hand and somebody will find you. Or just call something that you're interested in. You know, life is great when you pursue passion, and if you're passionate about something that is or isn't working well, go see them and tell them that you'd be happy to help. And you'll be amazed how delighted they'll be when you do that.
And I guess if you can't spend time, or you think you can't spend time, you can always give some money, right?
Yeah, money is a lot easier to find sometimes, actually, than passionate people who want to make a difference. There's no substitute for that.
Could you share with us how you would, I guess, encourage someone to find what their passion is?
Oh boy, that's a pretty philosophical question. You know, there are things that I think inspire each of us differently. And if you're, deeply involved in something that you're doing for mechanical reasons, and you're not sure that it's stirring you in some way, then maybe you need to keep searching a little bit for something that makes your heart go a little bit faster. And there's an old saying that if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, and I think that there's probably some merit to that. Maybe that's a little bit too expansive, but it's a place to start.
So is real estate your passion, or would you say just entrepreneurship in general?
Generally, I was talking with a bunch of young folks last week here, and Evan happened to be in that situation. Somebody asked me, why do you still do it? And I said, well, I think I'm a deal junkie. And the whole idea of being able to take an idea, form it completely from scratch, and see if you can make it turn into something three-dimensional, still excites me. So I'm still at it.
Call it a sickness.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial sickness.
Yeah.
So could you tell us what was your first adventure into business that you did try that you wanted to see would happen?
It's probably a revealing story. I was 10 years old. I grew up in a rural part of Ohio, and Father had a little small building that they made prefabricated wooden structures in. And every Saturday he would take me and I would sweep out this little plant, and there were pieces of wood that were left over, and one day I said, why don't we bring these home and make kindling wood to start a fire? And it was in the winter in Ohio, and we did. And I said to my father, I wonder if anybody would buy this. And my dad was great. Instead of just telling me I was stupid or trying to tell me how to do all the parts, he made me sort of figure it out. So I got some bags that I bought for 1 cent. My dad drove me to the plant. I swept out the plant. I put all the little things in the bag. We took it to a grocery store. The grocer sold it for 50 cents. I had 1 cent in overhead, and I got 49 cents in profit, and I've been all downhill since then. It's never been that good for the rest of my life. But I got hooked on the notion that you could think up something and try it, and it would work. So maybe that started this whole slippery slope for me.
And did you sell that business?
No, unfortunately, I could never find somebody to drive me around like my dad did. So,
what's kept you in Hawaii? I know you passed through initially. What caught your eye about it? Why did you decide to stay, and why have you stayed?
Maybe in the preamble that Carrie gave about a story of someone coming here and kind of falling in love with it was absolutely true. It was a visceral thing. I got off a ship, walked around here for a couple of days before we continued on our trip, and it was like no place else I'd ever been. And I still feel that same way all these years later. Every time I fly into Honolulu on the way back from wherever I've been in the world, I'm still thrilled to come home here. So it was molecular, maybe, or something.
Can you talk a little bit about when you met Duncan McNaughton and when he came to work for you, how that came about, and how you guys basically are now legends in this town, right?
Well, I don't know about the legends part, but I can tell you how we got to know each other. I went to work for Duncan, as I said, and I worked there for 11 months. We had a great personal relationship, and we had a great professional respect for each other. And it was an opportunity for us to join our skills, and we did that for 10 years. And we had some great experiences doing that. I think it was a chance for both of us to learn what it's like to be a partner, which is a whole nother experience for your young entrepreneurs. Partnering is its own adventure. You have to make room for somebody else in your life, not unlike a marriage. So you have to accommodate other folks and their needs, and you have to work on each other's strengths and tolerate each other's parts that aren't what you would pick out of the A list, and we all have those. So it was a great experience for both of us.
How was it starting this business at 27? I mean, because Evan and I started our first business, Bubble Tea Supply. I guess I was 27. I mean, we always look back and think about how those days were, and for you, that's 27. How was it? Because Hawaii's very different also.
Yeah, times are always different, but I think people who want to go do something, which obviously you two have been and continue to do, the time in which you do it doesn't really change. There are folks who are going to step out of the crowd and try it, and some don't succeed and some do, and some sort of go along, somewhat in the middle. So I never really thought about my age, and I bet you guys didn't sit around saying, gosh, we're only 27, therefore we probably shouldn't do this. At least I never had that. I never correlated what I was doing with how old I was.
Well, I guess, too, I'm wondering about the people you dealt with, because, it's not just purchasing a drink, like a bubble tea. It's real estate. It's a lot of money. It's properties and thousands of dollars, hundreds and thousands. And here you're a 27-year-old kid, right? People call them kid when they're much older.
Yeah.
And you're trying to sell them on your idea or what you're going to do with it. So I'm wondering how that was for you.
Again, I've never thought about that question until you just asked it, Carrie. I can't remember saying, gosh, I hope these people don't think I'm too young to have this discussion. I was so focused on what I was trying to get done that maybe that sort of singular purpose was so evident to the people that I was talking to at that time that they said, this guy maybe is really young, but he sure seems to want to go from here to there. And they overlooked the inexperience and the age and the lack of understanding of this place, which is not like going from, like Cleveland to Chicago. Going from rural Ohio to Honolulu is like an immense journey from a cultural standpoint. That was a great learning experience for me.
What do you think has been the biggest difference between those entrepreneurs that make it and the entrepreneurs that don't?
Perseverance. I mean, the people who just refuse to give up. And I think back on a number of people who have come and gone through the community here over all the time that I've been in business. And that's a hallmark personality trait, I think, Evan. You've heard me say this already, but luck, it can't be dismissed. As much as I used to hate the notion that luck had a lot to do with it, because I like to think it was all about personal merit and you did what you did. I've watched some really talented, smart, well-meaning people come and go, and they just never kind of got the right break at the right time. And that's an unfortunate component of it. And I think that, stamina, just having the constitution to just get up and keep going at the problem and being adaptive, because life's not linear, and you just watch these. It's all about problem solving, and the problems come at you from every which way, and they're never the same, and there's no absolute answer to each one's a unique set of challenges that you have to solve in some way that's, particularly when you're starting it, you don't have a catalog of experiences to draw from, so you just pick one choice. You say, okay, I don't like this, I don't like this, so I'm going to take this one and hope that it works out, right?
So in your experience, in your development, per se, was there a tipping point or a point where things just hit it? I mean, you're working really hard and all of a sudden, boom, stuff starts happening.
I can't define a moment like that where I sort of sat back and said, gee, I just came down the other side. I mean, I've been going up this really seemingly insurmountable steep grade for a long, long time, and it's getting flatter. But it may be the nature of this business, Evan. Our business, the gestation period of a project in today's world is at the short side for something not very big and complex, about 3 years and 5 or 6 years. So there are these long commitments. You start one, and you don't know how it's going to end until 5 or 6 years later. So there are these big, long waitings. And so our business doesn't have sort of gradual, measurable improvements, perhaps like the companies that you folks started, where you know how many units you sell one week, and if you sell more units the next week, and you can make a little graph and see. Our business doesn't really work like that. It's very lumpy, and it has really big time lags. And there are great big paydays. So you kind of go along and, either it works out really well or it doesn't. And that's the nature.
Just like the Outrigger Enterprise Beach Walk, right? So could you tell us a little bit more about that, because you're involved with that also?
That came about as an extension of a relationship I have with the Outrigger company, on whose board I have the privilege to sit. In the discussions within the company over time, they decided to try to reinvigorate all of that whole portion of Waikiki, and so we decided that it might be something we could do together. I'm not a hotel guy, so they obviously are the greatest hotel folks in the state, and so they did the hospitality part, and I did the development and the retail part, and we tore down a mass of really old, dilapidated hotels and narrow street side retail, and are going to reopen it in December with renovated hotels and new retail, and we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting.
What would you say has been your greatest challenge so far in your life, and how have you overcome that?
Boy, I think at some point in my career, I was insatiably interested in the next deal. And I had to find out through just trial and error where I could and couldn't go in terms of my own limitations. Because none of us have boundless capacity and endless tools, and you just can't do everything. You can only do certain amounts of things. And you can only do those things really well if you operate in a certain scale. That was a tough learning experience for me, because my natural inclination was to try to, want to do more things and take on more challenges. So probably by the time I got into my mid-late 30s, I began to realize that I had to make choices, and that the choices that I was making were really important, not only to me, but the people who were working for us or investing with us and that sort of thing. So it was a sort of an awakening to understand where my limitations were.
So on a professional and personal level, what do you feel has been your greatest life accomplishment?
Oh, being a father, by far. I remember my grandfather telling me when I was 16 years old that the most important things in your life were your friends and your family and your health. And when I was 16, I was playing sports, and I said, well, my health is great. I mean, at 16, your family's not your most favorite thing in the world anyway. And I had some friends, so I couldn't really understand what he was talking about. And as you would imagine, he got a lot smarter too as I got older, and that truly turns out to be the case. You have to take, great care of your health and take wonderful joy in both your friends and your family. So I think being a part of this community, if I would look back and say, in addition to my family, being a part of this community has been my greatest pleasure.
Are you able to look back and think about maybe your fondest childhood memory that has carried throughout your lifetime so far?
Well, I don't know whether this was sort of a learned addiction or one that I came to later, but my father and I used to spend a great part of every Sunday when I was a kid fishing. It was sort of a ritual. We'd get up really early, and we'd leave my mother and my sister sleeping, and we'd run off and go someplace and go fishing. It's like Huck Finn for the day, and it's still a passion of mine. So when I'm not working, I love to go fishing, and so that stuck with me, maybe from those origins or for other reasons, but it's still something I really love to do.
So being that you're in Hawaii, if you didn't do real estate, do you think that you'd be a fisherman?
Probably, yeah. I would probably be doing something on the water. I love the water, so then that's part of the great joy for me about living here.
Last time we talked about Guam and the shopping center you had built and all the issues that came up with that and how you made it through. Can you maybe share with us again?
Yeah, Servco Corporation here and I built a shopping center down in Guam in 1996, which actually the Servco folks had been involved in for 25 years. And they decided to redevelop this property, and we decided to do it together. And we built the project. It took about a year or so to do it. In the course of that time, in the first, I think, 24 months that we owned the property, a Korean Airlines flew an airliner into the side of the island and blew up and killed everyone aboard, which automatically terminated all the Korean visitors to the island. So 12% of the visitors to the whole island stopped coming on one day. In the next 2 months after we opened, we had 3 hurricanes, one of which was the largest hurricane they'd ever had in Guam. Then the yen went into a total nosedive. It went from 80 to $1 to 140, so it almost doubled. Then 9/11 came, then SARS. And Mark Fukunaga, the chairman of Servo, and I kept thinking, this has got to be the last one, and then we had another one, and then another one, and another one, and another one. And I think that ties back to an earlier discussion we had about what separates people who might survive in this business and not. You just have to keep going. And keeping the relationships together down there and make the community of tenants and merchants and employees, you have to inspire them to clean it all up and rebuild it and start over and then do it again and do it again and do it again. And now it's doing really well because it's on a great side of a cycle, but the journey from there to here was not one that you'd ever want to live through, and you probably couldn't even think you could invent. All those things couldn't possibly go wrong sequentially in one place, and they did. That was a good learning experience.
If there was one message that you'd like to give our viewers out there, what message would that be?
Well, I think that the one we've already talked about, which is you have to give back. and you have to take great care of the people in the community who don't have quite the same capacity to care for themselves. The community will be better for it. They will be richer for the experience. And if we don't do that, then we can't expect this place to be what we want it to be for ourselves or our children, our grandchildren. So I would encourage them to step up and help out. At whatever level they can help, it all makes a big difference.
One more question. It's going to bring out the fun part in you, okay, real quick. So Joan told us about the crazy parties that you had at your house. Could you share with us a little bit about those memories when you had those crazy parties up at your house?
Oh boy, this is getting revealing. We used to have every Mardi Gras, we'd have a Mardi Gras party, and they started out being pretty pedestrian. They got less so over the years, and finally I think we just got too old to keep doing them. But we had a great time for a while doing them every year, and I think that in some ways I kind of miss that. We had a lot of fun doing it, costumes, and it was great fun. The last one, the police came really early in the end of the party, and these two guys in uniforms came, and we said, geez, those are the greatest uniforms anybody's got. I mean, best costumes, come on in. And one of them wanted to stay, and the other one took the other guy, and they left. So we never saw them again.
Well, you're never too old to party and have fun.
That's right. That's right. It's been great to visit with you both. I really appreciate the chance to come and sit in with you, and I wish you the very best of luck going forward.
What last bit of advice could you give people out there to close up the show?
On the business side, which may not be completely independent of what I would suggest on the community service side, I mean, on the business side, you got to follow your heart, and you got to do what it is that inspires you. And for those who want to be entrepreneurial in and outside of larger organizations or entirely on your own, you have to be willing to lose, because sometimes that's the ultimate risk. And with respect to the community, if you don't give back, then you're probably shortchanging the environment that you live in. And so you have to find a balance point amongst your business, your family, and the community.
Well, thank you so much, Dick Gushman, for joining us today on Greater Good TV.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you for letting me be here.
And hope to have you back again soon.
Anytime.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.